At the altar, the groom turned love into cruel humiliation. Before everyone, he called purity a shame and a disgrace. Tears fell, until a millionaire broke the silence. When he kneels, the bride's destiny changes forever. Before continuing, tell us which part of this story has touched your heart the most so far. Your participation is what makes this channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe, because the end of this story has such a huge twist that not even a soap opera would dare to show. Marina Smith never imagined that the most anticipated day of her life could turn into her worst nightmare. There she was, at 26 years old, dressed as a bride in St. Mary's Basilica in the heart of the Kensington district in London. The white French lace dress she had chosen with such care months ago now seemed to weigh tons on her shoulders. Her hands trembled holding the bouquet of white lilies, and her heart raced at a pace she couldn't control. The church was packed. 300 guests occupied the dark wooden pews, all impeccably dressed, representing the London elite. Businessmen, lawyers, doctors, heirs to great fortunes. The kind of people Marina never imagined being part of her life until she met Philip Carter 3 years earlier. He was everything she wasn't. He came from a traditional family, studied at the best schools, graduated in business administration from the London School of Economics, and took on prominent positions in his father's company, one of the largest construction firms in the city. Marina, on the other hand, grew up in Croydon, the daughter of a seamstress and a bus driver who passed away when she was just 15. Her mother worked tirelessly so that she could study, and Marina succeeded. She graduated in literature from University College London, taught English in private schools, and dreamed of becoming a writer. It was at a lecture on social entrepreneurship that she met Philip. He was in the audience. She was presenting a project on literature in urban areas. At the end of the event, he approached her, praised her work, and asked for her phone number. 3 months later, they were dating. In the beginning, everything seemed like a fairy tale. Philip was attentive, polite, and introduced Marina to his friends and family. His mother, Mrs. Helen, was cordial, although Marina always felt a certain distance in that rehearsed smile. His father, Mr. Arthur, barely looked at her during dinners, but Philip assured her it was just their way, that with time everything would improve, and Marina believed him. Because when you're in love, you believe. The marriage proposal happened during a weekend in the Cotswolds. Philip rented a suite in a charming hotel, prepared a candlelit dinner, and to the sound of classical music, knelt before her with a diamond ring that sparkled as much as Marina's eyes at that moment. She said yes without hesitation. Finally, after so many uncertainties, she would have a real family, someone who chose her, someone who loved her, or at least that's what she thought. Now, standing before the altar, Marina felt the weight of all those eyes on her. The priest smiled gently, waiting for the groom. The music played softly in the background. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. Weddings were like this, she thought. Everyone gets nervous. It's normal. But there was something different in the air, a tension she couldn't name. When Philip entered, walking down the central aisle beside his mother, Marina felt her stomach churn. He was serious, too serious. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't looking at her with the affection he usually had. He seemed distant, as if fulfilling an obligation. Marina forced a smile, trying to appear calm, but inside, fear began to grow. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Philip ascended the altar steps and stood beside her. The priest began the ceremony with the traditional words, speaking of love, commitment, fidelity. Marina could barely hear. Her heart was beating so fast it seemed everyone could hear it. She glanced sideways, seeking some comfort in Philip's face, but he maintained that closed expression, his eyes fixed on the priest without even looking at her. Then, at the moment the priest asked if there was any impediment to the marriage taking place, Philip raised his hand. The silence that fell over the church was deafening. Marina felt her legs give way. What was happening? Why was he doing this? The priest, equally surprised, hesitated for a moment before asking, his voice trembling, if Philip wished to say something. And then Philip turned to Marina. For the first time since entering the church, he looked her in the eyes. But there was no love in that gaze. There was coldness, contempt, and something Marina never imagined seeing directed at her, disdain. He took a step forward so everyone could hear him clearly, and said in a loud, firm voice without any trace of emotion, "I cannot marry you, Marina. You are a virgin and worthless." The words echoed through the church like thunder. Marina felt the world collapse around her. It couldn't be real. This wasn't happening. She opened her mouth to say something, anything, but no sound came out, only a deep, suffocating void that swallowed her whole. Murmurs began to spread among the guests. Some women covered their mouths, shocked. Men exchanged uncomfortable glances. Someone let out a stifled laugh, quickly hushed by a disapproving look. Marina was paralyzed, unable to process what was happening. Philip continued speaking, as if reading a rehearsed speech. "I've been reflecting on this for months, about the kind of woman I want by my side. And I realize that you are not that woman. You are too innocent, inexperienced, without the sophistication my social circle demands. I need someone who understands the world I live in, someone who is on par." Marina felt tears burn her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of everyone. She tried to find words, but her throat was constricted. All she could do was look at Philip, trying to understand how the man who claimed to love her could be doing this, how he could be so cruel. And then came the final blow. "Furthermore," Philip continued with the same coldness, "I am in love with someone else, with someone who truly understands me, someone who has always been by my side." He turned and pointed to the back of the church. All eyes followed the direction of his finger. And that's when Marina saw Julia, her best friend, the only person she truly trusted since childhood. Julia was sitting in the back rows, her eyes downcast, her hands clasped in her lap, her face pale. She didn't look up. She said nothing. She just remained there, motionless, like a statue of guilt and fear. Marina felt her legs give way. The bouquet slipped from her hands and fell to the floor with a dry thud. The flowers scattered across the marble steps. She staggered backward, trying to hold on to something, but there was nothing, only the void. The ground seemed to open beneath her feet. The murmurs turned into open conversations. Some people stood up, indignant. Others remained seated, watching the spectacle with morbid curiosity. Marina wanted to disappear. She wanted the earth to open up and swallow her. She wanted to wake up and discover that this was just a horrible nightmare. But it wasn't. It was real. Painfully real. Philip took another step toward her, and Marina instinctively recoiled. He seemed satisfied with her reaction, as if this was exactly what he wanted, to humiliate her, to destroy her, in front of everyone. "You don't have what it takes to be my wife," Philip said, with a cruelty Marina never imagined him capable of. "You are just a teacher with no future, no social standing, nothing you can offer me. I need more, and Julia offers me that." Marina finally found her voice, even if it was trembling and broken. "Why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me before? Why did you bring me here just to humiliate me like this?" Philip smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "Because I needed everyone to see. I needed them to understand that I don't accept less than I deserve. You were a mistake, Marina, and I am correcting that mistake now." Tears finally began to stream down Marina's face. She couldn't hold them back anymore. The pain was too intense. The humiliation was unbearable. She looked around, searching for a friendly face, someone who could help her, but all she saw were looks of pity, judgment, and curiosity. It was then that something unexpected happened. A man stood up among the guests. He was sitting in the 5th row on the right side. Marina had never seen him before. He was tall, strong, with broad shoulders and a posture that exuded authority. He wore an impeccably tailored dark grey suit, and his eyes were intense, penetrating. He walked down the central aisle with firm, decisive steps, and everyone he passed turned to look. When he reached the altar, he stopped in front of Philip. The two men stared at each other for a long moment. The stranger was taller, more imposing. Philip, for the first time, seemed uncomfortable. He took a step back, as if instinctively recognizing he was before someone he shouldn't challenge. The man said nothing to Philip. He simply ignored him, as if he wasn't even worth a word. Instead, he took off his own jacket, revealing an impeccably white shirt, and with a gentle, delicate gesture, placed the jacket over Marina's trembling shoulders. The gesture was so unexpected, so kind, that Marina was left without a reaction. She looked up at the stranger's face, and for the first time since Philip began to speak, she felt something beyond pain. She felt protection, security. As if, at that moment, someone was finally on her side. The man turned to Philip and with a grave, controlled voice, yet laden with a veiled threat, he merely said, "You've done enough damage." Philip tried to respond, but the words died in his throat. He looked around, seeking support, but even his mother, Mrs. Helen, was motionless, watching the scene with wide eyes. No one moved. No one said anything. The stranger then turned to Marina and with a soft, almost paternal voice, asked, "Can you walk?" Marina nodded, even though her legs were still trembling. He extended his arm and she, without thinking, took it. He guided her down the altar steps through the central aisle of the church, while all the guests watched, in absolute silence. Some held up their cell phones, taking photos and recording videos. Marina knew this would spread across social media in a matter of minutes. But, strangely, she no longer cared. All she wanted was to get out of there, to escape that humiliation, to disappear. When they reached the church door, Marina breathed the fresh air of the London afternoon. The sky was cloudy, threatening rain. She felt her legs weaken again, and the stranger held her firmly, preventing her from falling. A black car, a gleaming Mercedes-Benz, was parked in front of the church. A driver, in a suit, opened the rear door. The man helped Marina in and then entered himself, sitting beside her. The door closed, isolating them from the chaos outside. Marina sank into the soft leather seat and finally allowed her tears to flow freely. She cried as she had never cried before, deep, painful sobs that came from a place so deep within her that it seemed endless. The man said nothing. He just sat there, in silence, respecting her pain. After several minutes, when the sobs began to subside, Marina finally found the strength to speak. "Who are you?" The man looked at her, and for the first time Marina saw something in his eyes that was not just authority or strength. There was something more, an ancient sadness, a wound that never fully healed. "My name is Gabriel Anderson," he said, his voice calm, "and I know exactly what you're feeling right now." Marina stared at him, confused. How could he know? How could anyone understand the pain she was feeling? Gabriel took a deep breath, as if gathering courage to speak about something he preferred to keep hidden. 8 years ago, my sister went through something similar. She was publicly humiliated by her fiancé in front of hundreds of people. They said she wasn't good enough, that she wasn't on par. She never recovered. She completely lost herself, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. Marina felt her heart clench. Now she understood. The pain in Gabriel's eyes was real, deep. He knew exactly what it was like to see someone destroyed by cruelty and cowardice. "When I saw you there," Gabriel continued, "standing at that altar, facing the same humiliation, I knew I couldn't stand by, not again." Marina didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to thank him. Another part just wanted to disappear and never see anyone again. She looked out the car window, watching the streets of London pass by. She didn't know where they were going, and honestly, she didn't care. "I have nowhere to go," Marina said, her voice still trembling. "My mother passed away 2 years ago. I've been living with Philip for 6 months. I have no home. I have no one." Gabriel nodded, as if he already knew this. "You can stay at my house for as long as you need. I have plenty of space." Marina looked at him, suspicious. Why was he doing this? Why would a complete stranger care about her? "I don't accept charity," she said, with a firmness that surprised even herself. Gabriel smiled, a small, almost imperceptible, but genuine smile. "It's not charity, it's a proposal. I have an agreement to offer you. If you accept, It can change your life. If you don't, I'll drop you off wherever you want, and we'll never see each other again." Marina hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain what little dignity she had left. But another part, the more rational part, knew she had no choice. She really had nowhere to go. She didn't have enough money to rent a place. She had no one who could help her. And above all, she was too exhausted to fight. "What's the proposal?" she asked cautiously. Gabriel turned completely to her, his eyes serious, his voice firm. "For 3 months you will accompany me to social events as my partner. There will be no physical or romantic involvement. You will simply be my public escort. In return, I will help you rebuild your life, training, education, opportunities, everything you need to get back on your feet." Marina frowned. It sounded too good to be true. There had to be a catch. "Why would you do this for me? Why do you care?" Gabriel looked away out the window. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with emotion. "Because I couldn't save my sister. But perhaps I can help you. Perhaps I can prevent history from repeating itself." Marina felt tears return to her eyes, but this time they weren't just from pain. There was something more, a tiny spark of hope. Minuscule, fragile, but present. She looked at Gabriel, at that man who, without knowing her, owing her nothing, decided to intervene, decided to protect her. And for the first time since Philip began to destroy her at that altar, Marina felt that perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance she could survive this. "I accept," she said, her voice firm despite the tears. Gabriel nodded, a visible relief in his eyes. "Then we will rebuild you. From scratch, if necessary." The car continued along the streets of London, moving away from the church, from the humiliation, from everything Marina knew. She looked back one last time, seeing the basilica disappear in the distance. There, in that place, she had died. The naive, passionate Marina who believed in fairy tales no longer existed. Now she needed to discover who the woman reborn from the ashes would be. Gabriel Anderson's mansion was in one of London's most exclusive neighborhoods, Belgravia. Marina had never been to that area before. She only knew it from interior design magazines and television shows that depicted how the very rich lived. Now, there she was, passing through the automatic gate of a property that seemed straight out of a movie. The car drove down an avenue, lined with imperial palms, until it stopped in front of an imposing 3-story building, with a Portuguese stone facade and large glass windows. There was an impeccably maintained garden, with fountains and sculptures Marina recognized as works by renowned British artists. Everything there exuded wealth, but it wasn't vulgar ostentation. It was discreet elegance, the kind of luxury that doesn't need to shout to be noticed. The driver opened the door, and Gabriel got out first, extending his hand to help Marina. She hesitated for a moment, still holding his jacket over her shoulders, before accepting the help. Her legs were still unstable, and the wedding dress weighed like lead. She looked down at the white fabric that just hours ago represented hope and happiness, and felt nauseous. Gabriel seemed to notice. With a discreet gesture, he called a woman who was waiting at the entrance of the house. She was about 60 years old, with grey hair pulled back in a bun, dressed in a simple but impeccable uniform. "Mrs. Cecilia, this is Marina. She will be staying with us for a while. Please prepare the guest room on the 2nd floor and provide her with comfortable clothes." The woman nodded with a gentle, warm smile, unlike all the looks Marina had received in the church. "Welcome, dear. I'll take care of everything." Marina murmured a low thank you and followed Mrs. Cecilia inside the house. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. The entrance hall had a double-height ceiling with a crystal chandelier that must have cost more than Marina earned in an entire year. The walls were decorated with original paintings, works by renowned British masters. There were sculptures, antique vases, furniture that was clearly signed designer pieces. As she ascended the marble staircase, Marina felt the weight of everything that had happened collapsing on her again. Her legs began to fail, and she held onto the mahogany handrail to keep from falling. Mrs. Cecilia, noticing her difficulty, offered her arm. "Calm down, my dear. One step at a time." They reached the 2nd floor, and Mrs. Cecilia opened the door to a spacious room with a view of the garden. There was a king-size bed with impeccable white sheets, a comfortable sofa, a noble wooden desk, and a door leading to a private bathroom. Everything was perfectly organized without being cold or impersonal. There were fresh flowers in a vase on the coffee table, and the silk curtains let in soft afternoon light. "Make yourself at home. I'll bring you some clothes to change into, and then I'll prepare something for you to eat. I imagine you haven't eaten anything today." Marina could barely nod. Mrs. Cecilia left, closing the door softly. Alone, Marina walked to the large mirror beside the wardrobe. The woman staring back at her was unrecognizable. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. The makeup she had applied so carefully that morning was smudged. Her hair, which had been styled in an elaborate updo, was starting to come undone, and the dress, that cursed white dress, seemed to mock her. With trembling hands, Marina began to take off the dress. The small buttons on the back were difficult to reach, and she struggled with them, feeling frustration grow with each passing second. Finally, with a sudden movement, she pulled the fabric forcefully, hearing some buttons pop off and fall to the floor. She didn't care. She just wanted to get it off, to erase any memory of that cursed day. When she finally managed to get rid of the dress, she threw it on the floor and went into the bathroom. The shower had powerful water jets, and Marina turned the hot water to maximum. She stood there under the scalding water, letting it wash away not only the dirt and sweat, but also the humiliation that seemed glued to her skin. She cried again, cried for everything she had lost, for the innocence Philip had destroyed, for the friendship Julia had betrayed, for the life she would never have. But more than anything, she cried for herself, for the foolish woman who believed in empty promises, for the naivety of thinking that love was enough, for the weakness that left her vulnerable to that pain. She didn't know how long she stayed there, but when she finally got out, the water was already starting to cool. She wrapped herself in a fluffy towel and returned to the room. On the bed, Mrs. Cecilia had left simple, comfortable clothes, grey sweatpants, a soft white cotton t-shirt, and a wool cardigan. Marina dressed mechanically, without thinking. Then, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared into space. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her trance. "Come in," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. Mrs. Cecilia entered carrying a tray of food. There was a bowl of chicken soup, warm French bread, fresh orange juice, and a slice of carrot cake. "You need to eat something. Strength doesn't come from thin air." Marina looked at the food and felt her stomach churn. She wasn't hungry. She couldn't even think about eating. But there was something in Mrs. Cecilia's maternal gaze that made her pick up the spoon. She took a few spoonfuls of the soup, feeling the warm liquid go down her throat and warm her empty stomach. Slowly, hunger began to appear. Marina ate everything on the tray, surprising herself. When she finished, she felt a little stronger, a little more present. "Thank you, Mrs. Cecilia. You are very kind." The woman smiled and picked up the tray. "Rest now. Tomorrow the world will still be here, and you will be stronger to face it." When Mrs. Cecilia left, Marina lay down on the bed, pulling the duvet over herself. She was exhausted, but knew she wouldn't be able to sleep. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying every second of that ceremony. Philip's voice echoed in her head, repeating those cruel words. Worthless virgin, as if purity was a cause for shame, as if she was less for having kept something she considered precious. She thought of Julia, her best friend since adolescence. They shared secrets, dreams, fears. Julia was by her side when Marina's father passed away. She was there when Marina got into university. She was there for all the important moments. And all the while, she was with Philip, betraying her, lying. How did Marina not notice? How was she so blind? The tears returned, but this time Marina didn't try to hold them back. She let them flow freely, soaking the pillow. She cried until she had no more tears, until exhaustion finally overcame her and pulled her into a restless sleep full of nightmares. When she woke up, the sun was already high. Marina took a few seconds to remember where she was. She looked around, seeing the luxurious room, and everything came back like an avalanche. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. It actually happened. She got up, her body aching as if she had been run over. She walked to the window and looked down at the garden. The day was sunny with a cloudless blue sky. In the distance she could hear the sound of birds and the discreet hum of traffic. Life went on, indifferent to her pain. Another knock on the door. This time it was Gabriel. "May I come in?" Marina quickly tidied her hair and said yes. He entered, wearing casual clothes, dark jeans, and a navy blue polo shirt. He looked younger this way, more approachable, though the authority was still present in every movement. "How are you?" Marina almost laughed at the question. How was she? Destroyed, humiliated, lost. But she just said, "I've been better." Gabriel nodded as if expecting that answer. He walked to the window and stood beside her, looking at the garden. "I know you must be confused, scared, perhaps even regretting accepting my proposal, so I'm going to be very clear about what I offer and what I expect in return." Marina turned to him, paying attention. "Over the next 3 months," Gabriel began, "you will have access to everything you need to rebuild yourself. Public speaking training, posture, social etiquette, communication, everything necessary for you to move in the highest circles without feeling inferior. In addition, I will give you access to people who can open doors in your career. You are an English teacher and want to be a writer, right?" Marina nodded, surprised he knew that. "I have contacts at the country's largest publishing houses. I can introduce you to them. But first, you need to be ready. You need to have the confidence to present yourself as an equal, not as someone asking for a favor." "And what do you want in return?" Marina asked, suspicious. "I want you to accompany me to social events, dinners, galas, launches. I need a partner who knows how to behave, converse, represent well. My public life demands this, and I prefer to have someone by my side whom I can trust." "Why don't you get a real girlfriend?" Gabriel looked away, and Marina saw that ancient sadness return to his eyes. "Because relationships demand things I cannot offer. Vulnerability, emotional openness. I'm not ready for that. Perhaps I never will be." Marina felt a strange connection to those words. She wasn't ready either. Perhaps she never would be. Philip had destroyed any capacity she had to trust someone again. "So it's a purely professional agreement? No complications?" "Exactly," Gabriel replied, looking directly at her. "No romantic involvement, no intimacy, just a mutually beneficial partnership." Marina thought for a moment. It seemed fair, clean. Without the emotional complications she was definitely not ready to deal with. "All right, I accept, but I have one condition." Gabriel raised an eyebrow, curious. "What is it?" "I want to work. I won't just stay here as a decorative doll. I need purpose. I need to feel useful." Gabriel smiled. It was the first time Marina had seen him truly smile, and the effect was surprising. He became more human, more approachable. "Don't worry, you'll work so hard you'll beg me for a day off." And that's how Marina Smith's transformation began. The first few days were the hardest. Gabriel hired a team of professionals to work with her. There was an image consultant named Patricia, an elegant woman in her 40s, who began by analyzing Marina's wardrobe, or rather, the lack of it. "You lost everything when you left your ex's house, right?" Marina nodded, feeling a pang of pain, remembering that all her clothes, her books, her things were still there, in that apartment that now belonged only to Philip and probably Julia. "So we're starting from scratch. I need you to trust me. We're going to create a wardrobe that reflects who you are, not who others want you to be." Marina agreed, and Patricia took her on a series of seemingly endless shopping trips, expensive stores, renowned designers, custom-made pieces. At first, Marina felt uncomfortable. She wasn't used to that kind of attention, that luxury, but Patricia was patient, explaining each choice, each combination. "You're not becoming someone else, you're just learning to present yourself in the best possible way." In addition to Patricia, there was Roderick, a public speaking and communication coach. He was young, charismatic, and had infinite patience. He started with simple breathing and voice projection exercises, then moved on to argumentation and persuasion techniques. "You have a beautiful voice, Marina, but it's trapped in your throat. You need to learn to use it with confidence. And there was Teresa, a psychologist specializing in trauma and emotional reconstruction. It was she who helped Marina begin to process what had happened. The sessions were intense, painful, but necessary. You can't just bury the pain. You need to face it, understand it, and then let it go. Days turned into weeks. Marina woke up early, did physical exercises with a personal trainer Gabriel hired, then had public speaking lessons, therapy sessions, and meetings with Patricia. In the evenings, she had dinner with Gabriel, and they talked about books, politics, art. Marina discovered that Gabriel was extremely cultured, with a library that would make any academic green with envy. But she also discovered that he was deeply reserved. He rarely spoke about himself, his family, or what he truly felt. She tried a few times to ask questions, but he always deflected, skillfully changing the subject. It was Mrs. Cecilia who, on a rainy day while they were having tea together in the kitchen, told Marina more about Gabriel. Mr. Gabriel is a good man, but very wounded. His sister, Isabella, was his father's favorite. When she was humiliated at that wedding, Mr. Anderson Sr. almost had a heart attack. He died 6 months later. And Isabella was never the same. She withdrew from everyone, plunged into deep depression. Gabriel tried everything, but she wouldn't accept help. Eventually, she simply disappeared. She went to live in another country, cut off contact with everyone. Gabriel never forgave himself for not being able to save her. Marina felt her heart clench. Now she understood better. Gabriel wasn't just helping a stranger. He was trying to correct a past mistake. He was trying to save his sister through her. This revelation changed something in Marina. She began to see Gabriel not just as a benefactor or a temporary employer, but as someone equally wounded, someone who was also trying to heal. 2 weeks later, Gabriel announced that they would have their first event together. A charity dinner at the Shard Hotel, one of London's most sophisticated. Marina felt nervousness take over her. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You are," Gabriel assured, with that unwavering confidence. "Patricia chose a perfect dress. Roderick prepared you for any conversation. You know how to behave. You just need to trust yourself." On the night of the event, Marina looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Patricia had chosen a long navy blue dress, elegant but not flashy, that accentuated her silhouette without being vulgar. Her hair was styled in a sophisticated bun, and her makeup was natural but impeccable. She looked like another person. Someone confident. Someone who belonged in that world. When she descended the stairs and found Gabriel waiting in the living room, she saw something in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. Admiration. Perhaps even something more, but he quickly hid it, returning to his usual neutral expression. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." "Ready?" Marina took a deep breath. She wasn't. But she nodded anyway. "Ready." The Shard Hotel was an impressive architectural structure, with its arched shape resembling a giant watermelon. At night, illuminated by green and blue lights, it seemed even more surreal. Marina felt her stomach churn when Gabriel's car stopped in front of the main entrance, where a red carpet extended to the door. There were photographers everywhere, flashes exploding like fireworks. Marina saw several personalities getting out of luxury cars, all impeccably dressed. She recognized some faces from television, famous entrepreneurs, socialites who graced gossip magazines. "Breathe," Gabriel said beside her, noticing her tension. "You just need to smile, greet, and be yourself." Easier said than done, Marina thought, but said nothing. She just nodded and waited for the driver to open the door. When she got out of the car, the flashes immediately turned to her. Marina felt the urge to hide, to run back to the car and flee, but Gabriel's hand was on her back, firm and comforting, guiding her gently down the red carpet. "Who is she?" someone asked. "She's Gabriel Anderson's new companion," another voice replied. "Never seen her before." Marina maintained the smile Patricia had taught her, soft, confident, but not forced. She looked at the cameras without seeming intimidated, waved discreetly, and continued walking beside Gabriel. Inside the hotel, the event hall was decorated with breathtaking luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, round tables covered with white linen. Tablecloths were arranged around a central dance floor, and there was a stage where an orchestra played classical music. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and sophisticated canapes. Gabriel took 2 champagne flutes and offered one to Marina. She accepted, grateful to have something to do with her hands. As she observed the hall, trying to identify familiar faces, a woman approached. She was tall, blonde, wearing a red dress that must have cost more than a popular car. Her eyes scanned Marina from head to toe, evaluating every detail with a critical gaze she didn't try to hide. "Gabriel, darling, what a surprise to see you accompanied. And who is this charming young lady?" Gabriel maintained a neutral expression, but Marina noticed an almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders. "Beatrix, this is Marina Smith. Marina, Beatrix Mortimer, one of the event organizers." Beatrix extended her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marina greeted her, maintaining the upright posture she had practiced. "Smith," Beatrix repeated, as if testing the surname on her tongue. "I don't know any Smith family in our circle. Where are you from, dear?" Marina felt her blood boil. She recognized that tone. It was the same one Mrs. Helen, Philip's mother, used to use, the tone of someone trying to put someone in their place, to remind them they don't belong. "I'm from Croydon," Marina replied, her voice firm. "And you, Beatrix, where are you from?" The question caught the woman by surprise. She blinked a few times, clearly not expecting Marina to retort. "I was born here in London, in the Gardens." "How interesting. So we're neighbours in a sense, both Londoners." Gabriel subtly smiled behind his champagne flute. Beatrix, realizing she couldn't easily diminish Marina, changed tactics. "And how did you two meet? I'm so curious." It was Gabriel who answered with a firmness that left no room for further questions. "We met recently, and we discovered we have a lot in common." Before Beatrix could continue the interrogation, a man approached and drew her attention to something related to the event. She said goodbye with a forced smile and walked away. As soon as they were alone, Marina released the breath she had been holding. "Is she always like that?" "Always," Gabriel confirmed. "Beatrix is the kind of person who needs to establish hierarchy in any situation. But you handled yourself very well. You didn't let her intimidate you." Marina took a sip of champagne, feeling the bubbles go down her throat. "I learned from the best. Patricia taught me that the best response to arrogance is firm politeness. And you learned well." As the night progressed, Marina was introduced to dozens of people, businessmen, politicians, artists, philanthropists. Each conversation was a test of her ability to maintain composure, to talk about various subjects without seeming ignorant or presumptuous, and to her own surprise she was doing well. Roderick had trained her to ask intelligent questions, to listen more, then speak, to identify topics that interested each person. And it worked. People seemed genuinely interested in talking to her, and some even praised Gabriel for finally finding a partner worthy of him. During dinner, Marina was sitting next to Gabriel at the main table. To her left was an older couple, the Thompsons, owners of a chain of hospitals. Mrs. Regina Thompson was an elegant woman, with perfectly styled white hair and a pearl necklace that probably cost more than Marina would earn in her entire life. "So Marina," Mrs. Regina began with a gentle smile, "Gabriel told me, you're an English teacher. How wonderful. We need more passionate educators in this country." Marina smiled, grateful for the genuine cordiality. "Thank you, Mrs. Regina. I love what I do. I believe that education is the only real tool for social transformation." "I couldn't agree more," Mr. Thompson added. "In fact, we're setting up an educational project in the communities around our hospitals. Perhaps you could help us with the literacy and literature part." Marina felt her heart race, a real opportunity arising right there at that moment. "I would love to help. Education has always been my passion." Gabriel discreetly placed his hand over hers for a second, a gesture of silent approval, before withdrawing it. Marina felt a strange warmth in that brief touch, something that surprised and, at the same time, scared her. After dinner, there was a charity auction. Artworks, trips, exclusive experiences were auctioned off, with values reaching absurd figures. Marina observed everything with fascination and a little discomfort. There was so much wealth concentrated in that room, while outside on the streets of London, so many people had nowhere to sleep or nothing to eat. Gabriel participated in the auction, buying a painting by a contemporary artist for £200,000. When asked if he would like to say a few words, he stood up and went to the stage. Marina had never seen him speak in public before. He moved with natural confidence, effortlessly commanding everyone's attention. His voice was clear, firm, filled with an authority that made people quiet down and listen. Thank you all for being here tonight. Education is the most important investment we can make in the future of our country. And that is why all the money raised today will be allocated to scholarships for young people from disadvantaged communities, because talent has no postcode, it just needs opportunity. The audience erupted in applause. Marina felt pride swell in her chest. There was something genuine about Gabriel, beneath all that facade of a cold, calculating businessman. He really cared. When the event ended and they returned to the car, Marina felt exhausted, but satisfied. "You were incredible," Gabriel said, as the driver drove through the still busy streets of London. "Everyone commented on how intelligent and charming you are." "I was terrified. It didn't show. You have a natural ability for this." Marina looked out the window, watching the city lights pass by. There was something different inside her, a small flame of confidence that was beginning to grow. When they arrived at the mansion, Gabriel accompanied her to her bedroom door, as he always did. "Thank you," Marina said, "for everything, for tonight, for giving me this chance." Gabriel looked at her in a way she couldn't decipher. There was something in his eyes, an emotion he quickly hid. "Good night, Marina." "Good night, Gabriel." She entered the room and closed the door, leaning against it. Her heart was beating faster than it should. Something was happening, something she wasn't prepared to name. The following weeks were a sequence of events, dinners, galas. Marina accompanied Gabriel to all of them, and each time she felt more comfortable in that world. People began to recognize her, to greet her by name. She made connections, exchanged contacts with influential people who could help her in her career. But more than that, her relationship with Gabriel began to change. What was initially just a professional agreement began to transform into something more. They spent hours talking about philosophy, literature, art. They discovered they shared similar tastes in music, both preferring jazz and bossa nova. They laughed together at inside jokes. They had rituals like having coffee together every morning in the garden. Marina began to notice small things about Gabriel, how he had a habit of running his hand through his hair when he was nervous, how his eyes darkened when he was angry, though he rarely showed it, how he always made sure she was comfortable before thinking of himself, and more frighteningly, she began to feel things she shouldn't. Her heart raced when he entered the room. She found herself thinking about him when she should have been focused on other things. She felt a tightness in her chest when he spoke about how their agreement would soon end. It was on a rainy night, 2 months after the agreement began, that everything changed. Marina was in the library, leafing through books, when she found a folded document between the pages of an old copy of a classic British novel. Curious, she opened it and began to read. It was a copy of the contract she had signed with Gabriel. She vaguely remembered signing several papers on that first day. She was so distraught that she barely paid attention. But now, reading calmly, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. Clause 7. Both parties agree to maintain a strictly professional relationship. Romantic or emotional involvement is strictly prohibited and will result in immediate termination of the agreement. Marina felt as if she had been punched in the stomach, forbidden to fall in love, as if feelings could be controlled by contractual clauses, as if the heart obeyed rules written on paper, and worse, she realized she had already violated that clause because she was falling in love with Gabriel. Perhaps she was already in love. With trembling hands, she folded the paper and put it back in the book. She needed air. She needed to think. She left the library and went to the garden, even with the rain falling. She let the water wet her hair, her face, her clothes. The cold rain was welcome, a contrast to the heat burning inside her. How did this happen? How did she let this happen? She swore to herself that she would never again allow herself to be vulnerable, that she would never again give someone the power to hurt her. And yet, there she was, feeling the same butterflies in her stomach, the same anxiety, the same foolish hope she felt with Philip. But it was different, a voice inside her argued. Gabriel was not Philip. Gabriel was kind, respectful, attentive. Gabriel would never intentionally hurt her, or would he? Because in the end he had made it very clear. This was just an agreement, 3 months, and when it ended, each would go their separate way. He didn't want emotional involvement. He wasn't ready. Perhaps he never would be. Marina was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the approaching footsteps. She only realized Gabriel was there when he held an umbrella over her. "You'll catch pneumonia," he said, with genuine concern in his voice. Marina couldn't look at him. She was afraid of what he would see in her eyes. "I just needed air." In the middle of a storm? It seemed appropriate. Gabriel was silent for a moment, holding the umbrella over both of them. The rain drummed on the fabric, creating a rhythmic and almost hypnotic sound. "Marina, what's going on? You haven't been yourself these past few weeks." Marina finally looked at him, and it was a mistake because she saw the same confusion in his eyes, the same internal struggle, and she understood with painful clarity that she wasn't alone in this. Gabriel was feeling it too. "I found the contract," she said, her voice low. "Clause 7. Gabriel tensed. His eyes closed for a second, and when they opened, there was pain in them. "Marina." "No," she interrupted. "You don't need to say anything. I understand. It was my mistake. I shouldn't have let this happen." "Let what happen?" "This," Marina gestured between them. "These feelings, this confusion. I know it wasn't part of the agreement, and I'll deal with it. I'll finish the 3 months as we agreed, and then I'll leave, and everything will go back to normal." Gabriel took a step toward her, his eyes intense. "What if I don't want it to go back to normal?" Marina felt her heart stop. She couldn't have heard correctly. "What?" "That damned clause," Gabriel continued, his voice heavy with emotion. "I put it there because I was afraid to feel, afraid to be vulnerable again. But it was useless, because I already feel, I already care more than I should. Gabriel, I know this complicates everything. No, it wasn't what we agreed on. But I can't keep pretending you're just a business partner. Not when all I think about is you. Not when I wake up wanting to see you. Not when I fall asleep thinking about our conversation of the day." Marina's tears mingled with the rain. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I feel it too," she admitted, finally. "I tried not to feel, but I couldn't." Gabriel dropped the umbrella. Now both were in the rain, soaked but not caring. He took another step, closing the distance between them. His hand reached up and touched Marina's face with a delicacy that made her tremble. "We can't," she whispered. "The contract. To hell with the contract." And then he kissed her. It was a slow, deep kiss, full of all the repressed feelings of the past 2 months. Marina felt the world disappear around them. There was only Gabriel, his lips, his hands, the rain falling on them. When they finally separated, both were breathless. Gabriel rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "What are we going to do?" Marina asked. "I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Together." And, there in the rain, Marina finally allowed herself to feel hope again. The days that followed the kiss in the rain were different. The tension that existed between Marina and Gabriel now had a name, and they no longer needed to pretend. But with that freedom also came a new complexity. Gabriel was different when he was in love. Marina discovered a side of him that few knew. He was attentive in small but significant ways. He left fresh flowers in her room every morning. He remembered tiny details of conversations they'd had weeks ago. He read the books she recommended just so he could discuss them with her. But there were also times when he withdrew, He spent hours locked in his office, dealing with business Marina didn't fully understand. When she asked if he was okay, he smiled and said yes, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the worry in his eyes. It was on one of those mornings, when Gabriel was particularly distant, that Mrs. Cecilia sat beside Marina in the kitchen and decided to tell the full truth. "You need to understand something about Mr. Gabriel," she began, her voice low. "After his sister left, he developed a condition. Doctors call it psychosomatic. When he gets very stressed or emotionally upset, he has crises, chest pains, shortness of breath, sometimes even faints. It's not the heart itself, it's the mind, from the guilt he carries." Marina felt her heart clench. She had already noticed that sometimes Gabriel breathed irregularly, that he placed his hand on his chest as if feeling discomfort. But she never imagined it was something so serious. "Does he get treatment?" "He does. Therapy, medication when necessary. But what really helps is when he allows himself to be happy, when he allows himself to live without the guilt. And with you, I've seen him happy for the first time in years, so I ask you to be patient with him. When he pulls away, it's not because he doesn't care. It's because he cares too much and is afraid of losing you too." Marina promised Mrs. Cecilia she would be patient, and she was, because she understood better now. Gabriel wasn't just a rich and powerful man. He was someone deeply wounded, fighting internal demons that most people couldn't even imagine. That same week, something unexpected happened. Marina was in her room, looking out the window, when she felt a sudden and overwhelming urge to write. Not just to write anything, but to write her story. Everything that had happened, the humiliation, the pain, the rebuilding. She picked up the notebook Gabriel had given her and began to type. The words flowed like a river after a storm. She wrote about a young woman who was destroyed at the altar, about a powerful man who rescued her. But she also wrote about the cruel backstage of the elite, about hypocrisy, judgment, the way people treated others as disposable pieces in a power game. Of course, she changed names and details. She transformed everything into fiction. But anyone who knew London high society would recognize the patterns, the situations, the people. She wrote every night, for hours on end. Gabriel noticed but didn't ask. He just made sure she had fresh coffee and something to eat. He respected her creative process. 2.5 months after the agreement began, Gabriel announced that there would be a major event, the annual London Business Gala at the Guildhall. It would be the biggest event of the year, with over 1,000 guests, politicians, businessmen, celebrities, and Gabriel would be one of the main speakers. Marina felt a chill down her spine. Something told her that night would be important, decisive in some way. Patricia appeared a week before with 3 dress options. Marina chose a long dark red one, elegant and powerful. When she looked in the mirror on the night of the event, she saw a completely different woman from the one who had been humiliated 3 months ago. This woman was strong, confident, unattainable. Gabriel was speechless when he saw her descending the stairs. "You look stunning." "You don't look bad. Yourself," Marina replied with a smile, adjusting his tie. He took her hand and kissed it softly. "Whatever happens tonight, know that I am by your side." Marina felt a tightness in her chest. Why did he say that? Did he know something she didn't? The Guildhall was even grander than the Shard Hotel. The neoclassical architecture, the marble columns, the illuminated gardens. Everything seemed straight out of a period film. Marina entered beside Gabriel, and this time there was no nervousness, only determination. They circulated through the hall, greeting acquaintances. Marina conversed with ease, laughing at the right moments, making intelligent observations. She was no longer the shy teacher from Croydon. She was a woman who belonged in that world as much as anyone there. It was when she was getting a glass of champagne that Marina saw them. Philip and Julia. They were across the hall talking to a group of people. Julia was wearing a light pink dress, and Philip had his hand on her waist in a possessive gesture. When Julia laughed at something someone said, Marina saw that it was a forced laugh, without real joy. Marina's heart raced. It was the first time she had seen them since that terrible day. Part of her wanted to flee, to hide, But another part, the part that had grown in recent months, wanted to confront them. Gabriel noticed the change in her expression and followed her gaze. "Is that them?" he asked, his voice tense. Marina nodded. "Do you want to leave?" "No, I'm fine." "Are you sure?" Marina took a deep breath and looked at Gabriel. "I am. They no longer have power over me." And it was true. When she looked at Philip now, she no longer felt love. She didn't feel anger, only indifference. As if he were a stranger she had known a long time ago and who meant nothing anymore. It was Philip who saw them first. His eyes met Marina's across the hall, and she saw the shock on his face. He clearly didn't expect to see her there, and much less accompanied by Gabriel Anderson, one of the most powerful men in the country. Philip said something to Julia, who turned and also saw Marina. The color drained from her face. She seemed to want to approach, but Philip held her by the arm. Marina simply turned her back and continued her conversation with a couple of businessmen who were next to her, as if Philip and Julia didn't exist, as if they were invisible. Minutes later, it was Gabriel's turn to go on stage for his speech. Marina positioned herself at a table near the stage, from where she had a perfect view. Gabriel began to speak, and his voice filled the hall with that natural authority Marina so admired. He spoke about social responsibility, about the importance of using economic power to transform lives, about how the British elite had a debt to the country and it was time to pay. Some in the audience seemed uncomfortable, but most applauded. When Gabriel finished to a standing ovation, Marina felt pride swell in her chest. This was the man she loved, someone who used his position not to oppress but to uplift. During dinner, Marina was focused on a conversation about contemporary British literature when she felt a presence beside her. She turned and found Julia there, with red eyes and a trembling chin. "Marina, I need to talk to you. Please." Marina looked at Gabriel, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She stood up and walked with Julia to a side balcony, away from curious glances. Julia began to cry before she could even speak. Tears streamed down her face, smudging her carefully applied makeup. "I'm so sorry. You have no idea how much I hate myself for what I did. I betrayed you. I betrayed our friendship. And why? For a man who's worth nothing." Marina remained silent, letting Julia speak. "Philip is not who I thought he was. He's cruel, controlling. Everything he did to you, he's doing to me now. But I deserve it. I deserve every second of this suffering." "Julia," Marina said finally, her voice calm, "I won't pretend that what you did didn't hurt me. It hurt deeply. But I also won't pretend that I still care. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." Julia sobbed louder. "I didn't expect your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that you deserve all the good things that are happening in your life. You always deserved it." Marina felt something release inside her. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, perhaps never. But it was closure. It was the ability to look at that woman who was once her best friend and not feel hatred. "Take care, Julia, and when you're ready to get out of this situation, I hope you have the courage." Julia nodded, still crying, and returned to the hall. Marina stayed on the balcony for a few more minutes, breathing the cool night air, processing that encounter. When she returned, she saw a scene that made her stop in her tracks. Philip was in the center of the hall, visibly drunk, speaking loudly and gesticulating aggressively, and the target of his fury was Julia. "You're an idiot," he shouted, not caring about the people around. "You can't do anything right. I should have stayed alone instead of settling for you." People began to move away, creating a circle around the scene. Some took out cell phones, recording. Julia's face was red with shame, tears streaming freely. Marina saw exactly what was happening. Philip was humiliating Julia in the same way he had humiliated Marina, and the people around were watching, judging, reveling in the drama. And then something surprising happened. Marina walked to the center of the circle. People fell silent, curious to see what would happen. She stopped between Philip and Julia, shielding her ex-friend with her body. "Enough, Philip," Marina said, her voice firm, echoing through the hall. "You've caused enough damage. Go home. Sleep." And in the morning, seek professional help. Because this, she gestured to him, is not the behavior of a man. It's the behavior of a coward. Philip tried to respond, but the words came out slurred. He stumbled, and 2 security guards approached, taking him by the arms and escorting him out. Marina turned to Julia, who looked at her with astonishment and gratitude. No one deserves to be humiliated in public, not even you. And then Marina did something that shocked everyone there. She extended her hand to Julia, helping her to stand with dignity. Her ex-friend held her hand tightly, as if it were a lifeline. "Thank you," Julia whispered. Marina didn't respond. She simply released her hand and returned to her table, where Gabriel was waiting for her with a look of deep admiration. "You are incredible," he said when she sat down. "I just did what was right." The rest of the night passed in a blur. People approached Marina to praise her, to say she had done the right thing. Some even apologized for having watched her own humiliation months ago without doing anything. When they finally returned home, it was past 2 in the morning. Marina was exhausted, physically and emotionally. Gabriel accompanied her to her room, as he always did. "Today you showed a strength that few possess," he said, holding her face in his hands. "You could have sought revenge. You could have let Julia suffer, but you chose compassion. That makes you stronger than anyone in that hall." Marina leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his heart. "I don't want to live trapped in the past anymore. I want to move forward, to build something new. And you will build it. We will build it. Together." They stayed like that for a long moment, just embracing, in silence. And in that embrace, Marina felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. In the following days, social media exploded with videos and photos of the incident. The way Marina defended Julia went viral. Articles were written about the elegance and class she demonstrated, about how she proved that revenge was not the path, but rather the maturity to rise above grievances. And it was in this climate of public attention that Marina made a decision. It was time to share her story. Not just to get revenge, but to give a voice to all women who had been humiliated, judged, diminished. She finished the book manuscript in a week of intense work. She called it Unforgettable, the story of a woman who was called worthless and proved she was worth more than all who judged her. When Gabriel read it, he was silent for a long time. Then he looked at her with tears in his eyes. "This will change lives, do you know that?" Marina nodded. "That's the intention." Gabriel used his contacts and secured a meeting with the country's largest publisher. The editor, a man named Richard Miller, read the manuscript in one night and called the next day. "I want to publish this, and I want to do a big launch. This book deserves to be read." Marina could hardly believe it. Her dream of becoming a writer was finally coming true, and not because someone pitied her, but because she had written something powerful, important, necessary. But along with the joy also came worry. The book, although fiction, was clearly based on her life, and people would recognize it. There would be consequences. "Are you ready for this?" Gabriel asked, as they celebrated the news with champagne in the library. "I am. I've been through the worst. Now it's time to turn this pain into something meaningful." Gabriel pulled her into his arms and kissed her with an intensity that made her forget everything else. When they separated, both were breathless. "I love you, Marina Smith, and I will be by your side every step of this journey. I love you too, Gabriel Anderson." And there, in that library full of other people's stories, they began to write their own. The launch of Unforgettable was scheduled for a Tuesday evening at Waterstones Piccadilly. Richard Miller, the editor, had organized everything perfectly. Banners with the book cover were spread throughout the bookstore. A table was prepared for the autograph session, and over 200 people confirmed their attendance. Marina was more nervous than she had ever been. It was one thing to attend social events alongside Gabriel. It was another entirely to be there alone, exposing her soul through words written on paper. Gabriel held her hand, backstage feeling her tremble. "You're going to be amazing, and I'll be in the front row applauding you." Marina smiled, grateful to have him by her side. The 3 months of the original agreement had already passed 2 weeks ago, but neither of them mentioned the end of the contract. She continued to live in the mansion, they continued to be together, and everything seemed natural, as if it had always been this way. When it was time to go up to the small stage set up in the bookstore, Marina took a deep breath and walked with the confidence she had learned in recent months. The audience erupted in applause. She saw familiar faces. Mrs. Regina Thompson was there, smiling proudly. Patricia and Roderick, her mentors, waved enthusiastically. And Gabriel, as promised, was in the front row, with a look of admiration so intense it made her blush. Marina opened the book and began to read the first chapter. Her voice, firm and clear, filled the space. People listened in absolute silence, captivated by the story of a woman who was broken, but rebuilt herself stronger. When she finished reading, there was a moment of silence before the applause erupted again. Several women in the audience had tears in their eyes. An elderly lady stood up and said, her voice choked with emotion, "Thank you for having the courage to tell this story. You gave a voice to so many of us who have been through something similar." Marina felt her heart overflow. This was why. For these women, for all those who had been humiliated, judged, diminished, so that they would know it was possible to get back on their feet. The autograph session lasted over 3 hours. Marina talked to each person, listened to stories, gave hugs, cried together. It was one of the most emotional nights of her life, but not everything was rosy. 2 days after the launch, Philip Carter filed a lawsuit against Marina for indirect defamation. He claimed that, although the names in the book were fictitious, anyone who knew the real story would know that he was the villain, and this, according to his lawyers, was damaging his reputation and his company. Marina was not shaken. She expected this. With Gabriel by her side, she hired London's best lawyers. The legal battle was just beginning. Meanwhile, the book became a phenomenon. A week it topped the bestseller lists. International publishers began making translation proposals. Invitations for interviews on television shows and podcasts kept coming. Marina accepted some. She appeared on the Marcia Gabriel show on Newsnight, gave interviews to The Guardian and The Times. In all of them, she told her story with honesty, without resentment, but also without minimizing the pain she had suffered. And the public loved it, because it wasn't a story of revenge. It was a story of overcoming, of a woman who chose not to become what hurt her. It was during one of those hectic weeks that something unexpected happened. An investigative journalist named Bruce Sterling called Marina. He had discovered the contract between her and Gabriel. How he got that information, Marina would never know for sure. Perhaps a disgruntled employee, perhaps a document leak. But the fact was that Bruce had proof that the relationship between Marina and Gabriel had started as a professional agreement. He gave Marina 24 hours to comment before publishing the story. When she hung up the phone, she felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. This could destroy everything. People would see it as deceit. They would say, she used Gabriel to climb socially, that everything was just a facade. Gabriel was furious when he found out. He can't publish this. We'll sue. We'll get an injunction. But Marina had another idea. No, we'll get ahead of it. We'll tell our version first. Gabriel looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Marina picked up the phone and called the producer of the This Morning show. She had received an invitation to appear on the show next week, but asked if it could be the next day. She explained that she had something important to reveal. The producer, realizing it was something big, accepted. The next morning, Marina was at the BBC studios. Millions of people watched the program at that time. Gabriel wanted to be by her side, but she asked him to stay home. This was something she needed to do alone. Anne-Marie Baker, always warm and welcoming, greeted Marina with a hug. "We're looking forward to talking with you. Your book is a huge success." Marina smiled, but her nerves were on edge. "Thank you for having me. I have something important to share with you and the public." Anne-Marie noticed the seriousness and nodded. "We're listening." Marina took a deep breath and began. "When Gabriel Anderson took me from that altar, he didn't just do it out of kindness. He offered me an agreement. For 3 months, I would be his companion at social events, and in return, he would help me rebuild myself. There was a contract, clauses, rules, and one of them was, don't fall in love. The studio fell silent. Anne-Marie was visibly surprised. But you broke that rule, didn't you? Marina nodded, tears in her eyes. We broke it, because feelings don't obey contracts, because we got to know each other, to respect each other, to love each other. What started as a professional agreement transformed into something real, and I don't regret it, because Gabriel gave me something no one else did. He gave me the chance to rediscover myself, to discover my strength, to become the woman I always was, but had forgotten. Tears streamed freely now, but Marina didn't care. So yes, our relationship started unconventionally, but the love I feel for him is real, and I hope people understand that sometimes the paths to love are not traditional, but that doesn't make them any less true. Anne-Marie, also emotional, held Marina's hand. Thank you for your honesty, and know that you have all my respect. When the program ended, the whole of Britain was talking about Marina. Social media exploded. Some criticized her, saying she had used Gabriel, but most defended her, saying she had been brave, honest, transparent. Bruce Sterling published his story anyway, but the impact was minimal. Marina had already told everything on her own terms. Gabriel was waiting when she got home. Without saying a word, he hugged her tightly, as if he never wanted to let go. You are the bravest woman I know. I learned from the best. They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other amidst all the external chaos. But the peace didn't last long. 2 weeks later, Marina received an unexpected call. It was from the University of Oxford. They were offering her a full scholarship for a master's in creative writing. It was a unique opportunity, the kind of chance that comes once in a lifetime. Marina was in shock. She had always dreamed of studying abroad, of learning from the best, but now with Gabriel, with the life she was building in London, the decision was not so simple. When she told Gabriel, she expected him to encourage her, to tell her to go, to seize the opportunity. But instead, he was silent. Gabriel, what do you think? He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden. I think you should go. Marina felt as if she had been slapped. What? You need to live for yourself. You can't stay here dependent on me. You need to explore the world, discover who you are without me by your side. But I already know who I am, and I want you by my side. Gabriel turned, and Marina saw the pain in his eyes. What if one day you blame me for stopping you from going, for holding you here? I would never blame you, because it would be my choice to stay. But Gabriel was unyielding. In the following days, he began to distance himself. He spent more time in the office, avoided dinners with her, barely looked her in the eyes. It was as if he was trying to make the separation easier, distancing himself even before she left. Marina couldn't take it. One night, she marched to his office and knocked forcefully on the door. We need to talk, now. Gabriel opened the door, surprised. Marina, I'm in the middle of a meeting. I don't care. Cancel it. He hesitated, but something in her eyes made him dismiss the executives who were on the video call. When they were alone, Marina exploded. You can't do this. You can't decide what's best for me. You can't push me away because you're scared. I'm not scared. Yes, you are. You're terrified that I'll leave and leave you alone, so you're trying to push me. Away first? Is that what you did with Isabella? Pushed her away because you didn't know how to help? Gabriel turned pale. Marina knew she had gone too far, but she couldn't stop. I'm not Isabella, and you won't lose me, unless you push me away yourself. Marina's words echoed through the office. Gabriel closed his eyes, the pain visible in every line of his face. I lost my sister because I couldn't save her. I can't lose you too. You won't lose me, but only if you stop trying to protect me from decisions that are mine to make. Gabriel opened his eyes, looking deeply at her. So what do you want to do about Oxford? Marina walked to him and held his face in her hands. I want to stay, not because I'm tied to you, not because I'm afraid to be alone, but because I choose to be by your side, because you are my home, and no master's degree in Oxford will change that. Gabriel pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. I love you so much it hurts. I love you too. And we're going to be okay. Together. They held each other for a long time, allowing the wounds to heal, the fears to dissolve. 3 months later, at a gala night at the Royal Albert Hall in London, Gabriel did something that surprised everyone. The event was to announce the winners of a literary award, and Unforgettable had been nominated in the Best Debut category. Marina looked beautiful, wearing a golden dress that shimmered under the theatre lights. When they announced that she had won, the theatre erupted in applause. Marina went on stage, emotional, and gave a speech thanking everyone who had supported her. But as she was coming down from the stage, Gabriel went up. Marina stopped, confused. What was he doing? Gabriel took the microphone and turned to the audience. I apologize for the interruption, but there's something I need to do. Here now in front of all of you. He turned to Marina, who had wide eyes, her heart beating erratically. Marina Smith. A few months ago, I walked into that church merely as a guest, but when I saw you there at the altar, being humiliated in the worst possible way, I saw my sister. I saw all the pain she went through, and I swore I wouldn't let that happen again, so I took you out of there. I offered an agreement. 3 months. He took a step towards her, but what I didn't expect was to fall in love with you, with your strength, with your intelligence, with your compassion. You taught me that it's possible to rebuild, that it's possible to love again, that it's possible to be happy. And then, before more than 1,000 people, Gabriel knelt. The theatre fell into absolute silence. Marina covered her mouth with her hands, tears already streaming freely. Gabriel took a velvet box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a diamond ring that sparkled as much as the stage lights. Marina Smith, you are not worthless. You are everything. You are my inspiration, my strength, my reason to wake up every day. Will you marry me? Not for a contract, not for convenience, but for love, by choice, forever. Marina could barely breathe. She looked at Gabriel, at the man who saved her, but also set her free. The man who loved her not despite her wounds, but including them. Yes, she whispered. And then louder so everyone could hear. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. Gabriel placed the ring on her finger and stood up, pulling her into a kiss that made the theatre erupt in applause and shouts of joy. When they separated, both laughing and crying at the same time, Marina looked around. She saw smiling faces, people standing to applaud. And for the first time since that terrible day at the altar, she felt no shame or humiliation at being the center of attention. She felt joy. Because this time she wasn't there as someone being destroyed. She was there as someone being celebrated, loved, valued. Months later, in an intimate ceremony in Gabriel's mansion garden, Marina and he got married. There weren't hundreds of guests, just the people who truly mattered. Mrs. Cecilia, who cried from beginning to end. Patricia and Roderick, who were proud of the transformation they helped create. The Thompsons, who became dear friends, and a few other special people who entered Marina's life during her journey. When Gabriel said his vows, looking deeply into Marina's eyes, she saw not just love, she saw partnership, companionship, respect. And when she said her vows, she was saying yes, not only to him, but to herself, to the future she chose to build, to the woman she had become. Life wasn't perfect after that. There were challenges. Philip's lawsuit was eventually dismissed, but not without causing stress and anxiety. Gabriel had some crises of his psychosomatic condition, and Marina learned to be present, to support him without suffocating him. They had arguments, disagreements, difficult moments, but through everything, they remained together. Because true love is not the absence of conflict, it is the conscious choice to work through conflicts, to grow together, to support each other. Marina continued writing. She published 2 more books, both critical and public successes. She became a speaker, talking about overcoming self-esteem, the power to get back on your feet. She helped countless women find their own strength. Gabriel expanded his businesses, but also his social projects. He created educational foundations, support centers for victims of emotional abuse, mentoring programs for young people from disadvantaged communities. And together, they built not just a marriage, but a legacy. One day, years later, Marina was organizing the library when she found that same contract she had discovered years ago. She read Clause 7 again. Forbidden to fall in love. She laughed. How naive they were to think they could control feelings with paper and ink. She put the contract back in the classic British novel, not as a reminder of a professional agreement, but as a symbol of where it all began, of how sometimes the best love stories are born from the most improbable circumstances. That night during dinner, Gabriel noticed she was quiet, thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" Marina smiled. "I was thinking about how grateful I am. For everything. For the terrible day at the altar that brought me to you, for the humiliation that made me discover my strength, for the tears that taught me to value laughter." Gabriel held her hand across the table. "That day at the altar, when I saw you there, broken and alone, I thought I was saving you. But now I realize that it was both of us who saved each other. One another." Marina squeezed his hand back. "And we will continue to save each other, every day, because that's what we do. That's who we are. From the altar of humiliation to the stage of honor. From the woman who was called worthless to the woman who proved to be unforgettable." Marina Smith had traveled a journey that would transform anyone. But the most important thing was not the external transformation, it was the internal one. She learned that her worth never depended on the approval of Philip or Julia or anyone in the London elite. Her worth had always been within her, just waiting to be rediscovered. And when she finally found that worth, when she finally saw herself as she truly was, strong, capable, worthy of love, nothing and no one could take it from her again. Because when they tried to say she was worthless, she became unforgettable. Dear listeners, we hope Marina and Gabriel's story has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of overcoming, transformation, and true love, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what moment touched you the most. Was it the humiliation at the altar, Gabriel's rescue, Marina's compassion in defending Julia, or perhaps the marriage proposal at the theater? We want to know what you felt. Every day we bring intense stories like this which reveal the deepest side of the human soul, showing that it is always possible to get back on your feet, no matter how far we have fallen. We'll be waiting for you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions and make you believe that life always gives us a second chance. See you soon.